I feel like there's this like prevalent belief in the spiritual community of I want life to be easy. I want to live in a state of effortless ease, very Abraham Hicks, I'm just going to manifest my perfect reality. And so when people listen to, oh, you got to have grief, they're like, I don't want the grief part. No, 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 cut that away. I'm going to manifest my way above that. But I feel what that does is it closes our hearts. And I feel that so many of us, we're so afraid of having our hearts broken again that we say we want love, but we're not willing to put ourselves at the line
Yeah.
that is required for love. So, how can one who's experienced deep heartbreak begin to build the pathway back to opening their heart?
Well, I mean, you just went for the jugular. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
$1 million question.
The
Hey,
essential question of life. Yeah.
how can we work this all out again? Well, first of all, I would say there's bypassing the human condition.
Yeah.
You cannot escape this being human business. And we want to manifest our way out of it. Oh, wouldn't it be delightful if we could actually just escape it all, become aliens, become Martians on some transcended planet, some ways else. I was dealing with someone recently and they said, I prefer other planets to Earth. I prefer aliens to humans. I prefer animals to us too.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, you're not my people. What I prefer are the gritty moments of life, the tangible, touchable situations that occur in which real change happens. You cannot manifest your way out of heartbreak. Think of it. Every lover leaves. Every person and then every relationship extends in either death or divorce, one way or the other. I mean, I hate to be gruesome about it, but that actually is the prognosis. I mean, this life is a terminal illness. And the sooner we recognize that none of us are making it out alive, then we can get on with the good stuff of loving. So I actually have to understand that heartbreak is wrapped up in this. And that heartbreak actually opens my heart. Oh, everyone's running around saying, I want my heart to be open. I want my chakras to be open. Oh my gosh. Do you know how that happens? It has to be shattered into 1,000 pieces. That's how we open our hearts over and over and over. We risk. Actually, I love what you said that this podcast started, in your grandma's house, was it? And this $16 mic. Yeah. And that's it. You threw yourself into the moment, not knowing where it would go. It could have ended in miserable failure. And maybe there's even been moments when you've been really up against the wall. But all things considered, you keep taking the next step. I mean, thus is podcasts, thus is life, thus is love. That's it. It's showing up to the next step. No matter how chintzy or cheap or expensive, I give my all to this next present moment.
It's so true. And it's something that like only when you're in it can you really experience it. Like I remember in the throes of right after my divorce, which was like I mentioned, a sudden divorce that happened as a result of a very big betrayal. And it was like complete just my life was thrown upside down. I didn't know what to believe. I couldn't trust myself, just the levels of feeling just so gaslit and confused. And I had never fully had like an on my knees moment like I had with that of just like when life just like and that was ultimately when I understood what surrender meant. Like before that it was just a concept, but to just be like I have no fucking idea what to do next. I don't know where I'm going to live, like all of these things, how to go through a divorce let alone, and it's like and I surrender and I know that this is happening for something greater than me. And then you just pick up the next piece, the next piece, the next piece, the next piece. And the greatest gift of it is the aliveness that it gave me on the other side of just the ability to feel. And I wouldn't give that up for anything because now I can see how I was like operating from, let's say, the radio spectrum of like 800 to 1200. And now it's like 0 to 10,000, and that just makes you feel everything more, right?
That's
It's
right.
like I laugh and cry on a daily basis, It's
Yeah.
just like, and what you said about it's like something about the mornings, like, you heal when you stop crying when you wake up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why is it the mornings?
It's interesting. There's a poem in the book where I talk about that I wake up early in the mornings just to imagine us dreaming together. And I remember kind of that feeling, whether it's been a lover who's left or great love, such as my father who was lost. But that feeling of waking up very early in the morning, can't I just sleep? But no, those are the beautiful, quiet moments, actually, where you are closest to that thing. Um, Pablo Neruda, the great poet, he said her eyes were full of absence. I love the whimsy and nostalgia. He's saying the thing I fell in love with was that she was somewhere else, and I think that that's so profound that actually, like, we kind of love those shimmering experiences we can't quite hold on to. Like when a lover leaves us, there is a special sweetness to that, and I didn't understand it fully. I have to be honest. About a month after the passage of my father, I was crying in a bar with my close friend who had lost his father a year earlier. And I said, does this end? Does this sadness ever end? And he said, well, the acute pain will go away, but enjoy it. It is a fine caviar you will never have happen again. He's not wrong. A year later, you don't wake up so early in the morning. The acute pain is dissipated somewhat. That caviar has been taken away and someone else will dine on it. Enjoy it while it's here. Your job as a human is to have the human experience. You were not given a Martian's life. You were given this life. Live it.
Yeah, like when you're in it though, I remember I'm like, I can't wait until it's been 1 month. Like once it's been 1 month, things will be easier. And then it's 1 month and you're still so fucking miserable. And then I'm like, it's the 3 month mark. That's what they say. The 3 months I make it past that. It's like, no, okay. It's the 6 month mark. And then the 1 year. And it's like, and I think grief never fully goes away.
Yeah, I've got a scar on my hand here, and it's actually a fairly large scar. And what happened was one October, I was going to make red curry. Seemed like a real good idea. It was actually Halloween. And I opened the can of red curry paste and well, I didn't open the can fully and I sliced my hand pretty good. So I pick up my daughter at the time and whisk her down to the hospital. And, they stitched up this hand. And about a week later, my hand started to swell uncontrollably. Had to go back to the hospital. Turns out they hadn't cleaned out the wound sufficiently. It gets cleaned out again, restitched up, all the things. I didn't sue the hospital. I probably should have, but I didn't think to. But this has always been a great illustration to me. Like, unless we're with the pain sufficiently in the beginning, unless we clean out that wound sufficiently, unless we experience it, so to speak, actually, you reopen it up. You rewound yourself later down the road. Healing starts to happen when we allow ourselves to be fully in the experience. And that's what the cleaning out process is. If you're too eager to sew it up too fast, you actually miss the healing.
And it's, yeah, the intelligence of like letting yourself like fully break down and be in that. And I think our society, we glamorize like the breakthrough.
Yeah.
And we like instantly want to go into like, what are the lessons I learned? And like, how am I moving forward? And especially when love is taken away from us, we're like, what I see happen a lot of women going through divorces and breakups is oftentimes the relationship didn't have a lot of love and intimacy. So as soon as it's done, you're like, I want the love, and
Yeah.
We were just talking about the concept of like limerence, of you just project that love on someone, this fantasy of this is the kind of person that will make all of this heartbreak worth it if I end up with someone like this.
Yeah.
And then it's a mirage that we continue to chase and we continue to tie our worth to. Because I think it's so for someone who's like in it right now, they're in the caviar, but it doesn't feel like caviar, of just like, it's my constant thoughts. Like, it's hard to have a normal conversation that's not about this grief. What wisdom do you have for them now, being a year out of it?
First of all, I would say whatever that grief is, you have to allow yourself to fully experience it. Now, what that doesn't actually mean is drowning in it. Like, letting it flow through you means letting your experience happen. But know that grief, like all emotions, is a rapid experience. Like, I may have grief in the next 12 minutes. I might break down crying. Actually, earlier today on the way, I was reading the intro to the book, and I felt the clutch in the back of my throat. My tears started to fall. My friend who was driving the car, he almost lost control of the car. He was crying too. We were both sitting there sobbing at the intro to it. And you're back at that grief moment. But the truth is, 12 minutes in, it dissipated. So one of the ways we need to experience emotions is to show up to them honestly, right? Have the emotion and let the emotion pass. Emotions aren't supposed to be a swamp where you just pool in them, right? You're actually supposed to be in the river of them. So I let it flow into me. I let it flow out of me. Yeah. And then I move on. Mm-hmm. And I know that a little later it will come in and go out again. Last year I stood in, I think, 4 different continents, 12 different countries, 17 different cities. All the joy you could experience is pounded into a year. And I also wept on all 3 of those great seashores. I cried in multiple cathedrals. I let the joy and the grief intertwine. When you read these stories in this book, I firmly resist the notion that this is a sad book. Like, there are beginnings wrapped up in it. Oh my God, there's this one story, and I was reminded of it, of a woman who falls in love with the loss prevention security guard. And she does so by calling him every time jewelry is stolen from her store. And she hears the safe voice on the other end of the line. Hello, ma'am. May I take the events of what happened? Yes. And so she falls in love with this very safe, secure presence. The only problem is she's married at the time. And of course, as happens, sometimes the marriage is a particularly poor one. Her needs aren't cared for. She feels neglected, maybe even abused. And contrast that with this reassuring presence on the other end of the line. The story kind of climaxes with him saying, do you want to meet for coffee? And she says, oh my God, I don't know if I should. But then she does. She goes, she meets him for coffee. Her hands are trembling. She spills the coffee. She's nervous. He cleans it up. And then he looks at her and she says, in a grip of the moment, time stood still. And he said, are you happy? Now, these are strangers, ostensibly strangers. But in that moment, everything shifted in her life. This is a true story. Many of the stories in this book are true stories. This is a true story. And everything changed for her in that moment. What does that mean? Well, it means that love's beginnings and love's endings are intimately wrapped up. I have no clue what happened next. Not really. We could only guess. Love happens outside in the backyards and the fields beyond the streets of right and wrong. Yeah. And so this beautiful encounter, this beginning might happen wrapped up in these unseemly endings. We protest the endings, but we love the beginnings. The truth is they go together. So if you're in an ending right now, know this too shall pass. Of course, if you're in a beginning right now, know this too shall pass. Either way.